G'day everyone, welcome to the Outback Packers podcast, the podcast where two mates from all the way across the world have a yarn talking Packers football and the green and gold. I'm Nate Gregory with my co-host Joe Pearson, as always, today joined by our very first returning guest, writer for Wisconsin Sports Heroics, Sam Holman. Sam, it's amazing to have you back. We're kind of in a very we're kind of in a period of transition here, and I think we're quite firmly in that with the news circulating with us recently. But how are you kind of feeling about the state of the team going into the draft?
I mean, there's a thanks for having me on again. First of all, it's kind of I didn't realize I was the first returning guest, so it's an
You're the
honor
only one
to
that
be
wants to
here.
come back. We scared everybody else off.
Yeah, but I feel excited about a lot of the talent on the team. Looking forward to seeing the rookies in their second year: Devontae Wyatt, Quay Walker, Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, all those guys, and then seeing how guys like T.J. Slayton and Eric Stokes, and a lot of the rest of the young guys on the roster kind of taking next steps, and obviously Jordan Love, seeing what he's got.
All right, so that leads into the first question I've been asking everybody so far. Where are you on the Rodgers situation?
Yeah, I think I've been pretty convinced, for a while, just with the way he talked after the season and all the interviews, that he wasn't going to retire. And I mean, obviously, I haven't watched all of them. I couldn't sit through that 2 hour podcast he did with Aubrey Marcus or whoever it is. So maybe there's something there that he kind of gave the vibes of retirement. But I felt like he's still got something to prove. I think he still wants to compete, and so I don't think he's going to retire. And just with the way he's talked in the past about me being more willing to finish with his career with another team. You hear the comments from Mark Murphy this past weekend, and just the language the team has been putting out. That pretty much this whole offseason so far. I think that he's pretty much gone. I think that they moved on to him, and as of right now, it seems like that he's going to be going to the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in the boat. Well, I've been in this boat for a long time that I don't care what happens, just get it done. But I mean, it seems like it's pretty damn close to being over in Green Bay for Rodgers. I mean, the sad thing is he's always said that he wanted to play till he was 40. And this will be the year that he'll turn 40. So I guess I think the Packers really screwed themselves in doing the contract last year. Had they
Yeah,
done it like 2 years ago, we maybe have been in a better situation if we wanted to move on from him. But having done the contract last year, the way they wrote it, the way they, pushed the money and all that around, it really hurts them one way or the other. But yeah, it's looking more and more like he's going to be a Jet. Hopefully, within the next few days, we're going to find out for sure. I know, I think he said to Brandon Marshall earlier that there is like a time limit set on it. So it must be one of those things that, if you want gone, you need to let us know by this time so we can make arrangements for you. If you don't want to be gone, then we're going to move forward with you. Because that's kind of been what the Packers have said all off season and that. If you want to be here, fine. We'll accommodate you to be here. If you don't want to be here, we'll accommodate you. We'll trade you. I think the only thing that they haven't told him was you pick a destination and we'll send you to that destination. I think it's been that we're going to go wherever we're getting the best deal. And I can't remember who it was, but I know somebody said that they wouldn't be surprised if there's like a last minute whole other team swoop in and try to make a better deal than what the Jets are going to offer. And I couldn't guess who that team is or whatever, but that would be kind of good. That'd be good for Packers if they could get like a bidding war going for them, because that just
yeah.
means
For
more and
sure.
more picks and players.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've seen a couple reports that Washington might be in on it. I know they've got some cap constraints, so I'm not sure how realistic that is, but I've heard that a couple times. And just a fun pipe dream. Panthers, they got the number one pick now.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
bring that on over.
I mentioned that yesterday. I think it was Jacob Morley said something about the Panthers needing a quarterback that could
Yeah,
control the room, and I said, "Well, they just traded for the number one pick, and we could really use that number one pick, and they could use a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm ready. I just want it to be over with. I want a
Yeah.
decision to be made. Come back, don't come back. Just do something.
Yeah.
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 And I'm really curious. I know that. Sorry, you could go.
No, you go. All good.
Okay. I know that at the beginning of kind of this whole process, the Packers front office essentially said, they want him to decide by free agency. I'm really curious if they included that legal tampering period as the
Mm.
beginning of free agency, because it kind of is now. Like
Yeah,
guys they're agreeing to deals like on Monday, and so I kind of wonder if they said that tomorrow's the deadline, and that's kind of what Aaron is taking it down to, but it's hard to know for sure.
it is. And I don't know. I'm ready to move on from it because it
Sure.
makes you angry in a way because he always said that he didn't want to be like Favre, and now we're in a situation where we're like Favre. It's well, I don't know. I think I still have the drive and I still got this, but then you got the team already drafting the replacement, and we're in that whole same situation. Packers drafted replacement. The old quarterback doesn't know what he wants to do. The Jets swoop in and try to take over the old quarterback. So who knows? In 18 years, maybe Jordan Love's going to end up in the Jets uniform.
Hmm. Seems that
Yeah,
way.
kind of seems like that.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I've always been in the camp that he should have been traded last year, or I guess 2 seasons ago now. It's
Yeah, but you're a Love homer.
yeah, he's my guy. I mean, but he's like, yeah, it's a tough position because it's pretty hard to justify not wanting to re-sign two-time back-to-back MVP. And to me, it kind of feels like Rogers got really pissed off with the Love thing, and then he he bet on himself and won. And the contract that he managed to wrangle from the Packers last season was kind of just a big like victory lap. I mean, if you look at like the way that it's been constructed is like, I mean, an amazing job by the agent, but I mean, what a grand way to fuck over the Packers. It's like pretty spectacular just how awful this contract is for this team, and it's probably honestly one of
Yeah.
the top three worst contracts in the league as it stands. It's pretty brutal. I mean, fantastic for the Jets. They get him for only like 15 million cap hit, but I mean, if like I mentioned this on Twitter the other day, I think the biggest reason why he's going this year and not next year is because if he stays for this year, his cap hit next year will be I think 100 million or something like that. Like no matter what. The dead money is just absolutely ludicrous if he sticks around for this year. So they really needed a 2-year commitment from him if he was going to come back this season. So I think that's probably like the biggest reason, honestly, why I think he's going to go to the Jets because he only really wants one more year. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy for him. I think
Maybe.
I think it's basically it's a done deal. I really have a tough time seeing him come back to Green Bay. I mean, we all kind of see how different the energy is surrounding the situation this time around, and the lack of commitment from really either side. Yeah, it's funny, but I'm like you guys said. I think we all kind of agree. We're all just ready to move on and see what Jordan Love has. I mean, he looks pretty good in those those QB camp throwing highlights. So hopefully it translates to the field.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So let's get into the actual subject of this episode. This is the latest episode in the draft series. We're kind of going over different. We're going over the different positions. Joe's got a new soundboard and he's been playing around with it the whole time.
Damn right, I'm going to use it the whole night.
So yeah, we're kind of going over the positions, seeing what free agents we should be scooping up, and whether or not we should be kind of kicking guys, or guys that you're kind of high on that we already have drafted. Devontae White is a fantastic one you've already mentioned, and then we'll get into the prospects. So I mean, is there anyone from free agency that you think we should be targeting, or you think will be coming back?
Not anyone specifically. I think will be coming back. I don't get a strong feeling that they want Jaron Reed or Dean Lauer. I think is the other main free agent. Back. I think that, I mean, they probably would re-sign them for cheap deals if they can have them, but I don't think there's a super. It's not like either of them had career years like someone like Keyshawn Nixon did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, In free agency, I haven't watched them extensively yet, just because I've been focused on draft stuff. But I do really feel like there's a really good middle class of defensive linemen, guys like David Onyemata,
Hmm.
Shelby Harris, who sounds like he might get released by the Seahawks. I'd love to pick up. So guys like that who just they probably aren't going to break the bank, but they can give you quality snaps on the defensive line.
Yeah, I really haven't paid attention to the free agency pool. You've got a list of them here, Nick, and the only one really out of that I would have any interest in right now is Samson Ibukam. I liked him coming out of the draft the year he was drafted. So and he's got experience in the Joe Barry system, so that would be a guy that I think that could be brought in. I can't remember what his weight is right now, but he might be more of an edge guy than an actual hand in the dirt lineman.
Yeah,
But
it becomes an edge guy right now.
yeah, so I mean, he'd be the only one out of your list, and even a couple of the other ones you have on your list are going to be more your edge guys than they are
Yeah.
going to be defensive linemen. Ngakwe and Clowney, yeah, they're going to be more of your edge guys, and really, I don't think Clowney is one of those like a long line of them that he's good when he's playing, but he spends more time on the injured list than he does on the field,
Yeah.
and we don't need that kind of headache here
Yeah.
here in Green Bay. So
But
Yeah, and there was some stuff this last season where he kind of it sounded like he got unhappy with his role with the Browns. Like he felt he
who
wasn't getting on
wouldn't
the
though?
field enough. And I mean, if you're going to be potentially behind Rashawn and Preston for a part of the year, I don't know if he'll really be eager to come to some place where like Green Bay where he can't start.
Right. So
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I imagine here with we're what 2 nights away from legal tampering in the new year, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot more cuts in that coming from teams trying to get under the cap. So the list could change, and there could be some surprise guys that maybe the Packers will pick up and not cost them draft picks for next year. Because if they do move on to Love, they're going to want as many picks as they can get to start building the team for Love. So,
Hmm.
that we'll just have to see what the waiver wire leads to going into the start of the new year.
Yeah, I mean, this team is not really in a position to be signing more than like two or three free agents max, and those are going to be like real cheap guys as well, including guys are going to be bringing back. I mean, it's I think a lot of we only have three defensive linemen, four on a contract, including Jonathan Ford from last year. Um, so they're going to probably be primarily building this just through the draft. But someone like, I don't know how much he's going to get paid. I mean, he's 29 years old, but I liked him when he was with Washington, Matthew Ioannidis. I really liked him, but I didn't really actually get to watch much of what he did last year. So if he's fallen off, maybe not. But based on what I had seen from him before, I like him. But yeah, I mean, there's not like, there's not really any kind of super big names I think we're going to be chasing after. But if we can find, if they do end up picking one, I think, I'm not even sure it's really necessary for the D line, not like some of the other positions that we have here. Um, yeah, I'm happy to get into the draft if you guys are now.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Let's do it. So I always start this section by asking the guests, who is your like favorite? Who's your guy? And I'm 99% sure I know exactly who it is, but why don't you tell us about your favorite, your guy from Michigan?
Yeah, Mozzie Smith, nose tackle or primarily played nose tackle, but he's actually the guy I had ranked second in the class behind Jalen Carter. And there's some, I could get there's flaws with a lot of like the top five guys, and so I can see different rankings. But for me personally, he's just got insane power. He's put up some crazy testing numbers at Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
He can rush the passer. He can still has some room to develop there, but he can already do some stuff there with using his footwork and his power to affect quarterbacks. And then he's just a dog up front. He's got insane strength. He can play multiple gaps. He can hold double teams. Basically, everything you want from a run defender.
Yeah, I kind of tried to cram a little bit of him in before recording tonight. and I didn't get too much. I mean, I saw that he had a good bull rush. He is strong, like Sam just said.
Hmm.
He's got a good motor to him. He doesn't seem to take, there's no downshift to him. It's just full speed ahead. Uh, he seems to have longer arms because he can get the hand in the chest and drive the O line back. The only thing that I wish with him was he was a little bit quicker off the snap. He seemed a little slow off the snap, and that could, in a way, if he doesn't work on it and can get quicker with it, that could hurt him in the NFL because he's not going to be going up against freshmen, sophomore, juniors. He's going to be going up against guys who have been in the league for 5, 6, 7 years, and he's got to have a little bit of a niche to him. Other than that, yeah, he looked good. Uh, I I can't even think his size wise right now. I think he's what 6'3", something like that.
320 pounds, probably.
That's what he was at the combine. During the season, his weight was listed like 337.
Yeah,
So
right.
I'll be interested to
Yeah, but
see
we
if
know that
he.
colleges always lie about those
Right.
stats. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, he's got good size. Uh, Again, if he could get a little bit quicker, I would be really happy with him. And I think he could. And it's also going to depend on how the Packers defense works. If they can get somebody to slot into the nose and move Kenny outside, I would be much happier. And if Mozzie could do it, then that would be perfect. But
Yeah, that's kind of my preferred path for upgrading the defensive line. Just get someone in that nose, move, let him rotate with TJ Slayton, and just
yeah,
let Kenny, do what he does best out of three technique.
yeah. So
Mhm.
nope, I don't really have any complaints about him other than the quick steps. So Nick, who's your guy this year?
Yeah, if Sam wasn't here, I would have said Marzi Smith. I love him.
Damn you, Sam.
It's just yeah, the whole the strength thing is what gets me. I mean, especially on the Packers where it seems like we're so like devoid of that physicality sometimes. It would be really nice to just have someone who's just like straight up just a strong dude who like he's a force in the middle of the line and you can't ignore him. You can't afford to ignore him. And it's been so long since Kenny has had like reliable help, and I really like Devontae Wyatt, but you always have to be looking to improve. And yeah, I think he could be
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I do like Siaki Ika at Baylor, the really big dude. I'm just not sure. Like, it's tough, right? Because Sam talks about moving Kenny to three tech full time and having like a true nose tackle to kind of eat up the middle of the line there. But I agree with that for sure, but I'm not sure how much the Packers actually want to do that, and I find it really difficult
Yeah.
to project where they're going to draft some of these true nose types, and especially someone like Ika, who's like a really big dude, and the RAS thing, whatever. He's a big dude. He's never going to be like a sub 7'3" cone kind of
Right.
guy, but I would like what I want and what the Packers would do is that they're two very different things, and yeah, I would definitely love them to draft on those, but I think they're really going to be in the market for one or two, like 3 or 5 techs, and just to kind of spell Devontae Wyatt and replace Lowry. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm going to tell you what I think of him, and then we'll let the expert Sam let you know what he's got. I did like that he's a big guy. I mean, he's a big boy. He's got a good first step. I thought he was a little bit quick off the line. So I always like that because that first step is everything. He
Hmm.
did put on a nice spin move for a guy that size. He had a pretty nice spin move. Um, he stays low out of his stance. The only thing, there's two things that kind of bug me with watching the little bit of film that I did on him was he he can struggle to disengage, which obviously you're not going to expect your defensive tackle to be this, especially a nose tackle, to be this ultimate pass rush specialist. But it seemed like he was getting stonewalled by single blocker. Not all the time, but there were some times that I saw. And then of course with his size, I wish he was a little bit more dominant than he was. He could get eaten up by some double teams, which again, you know, it's going to happen, but with his size, you would hope that he can push around a little bit better. So those were the only things that I noticed, was that I didn't think he was as dominant as he could be with his size and the struggle to disengage.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that there is there's truth to that, and there is something that is something that I noticed as well. Just that there are times when doubles, despite his size, can move him a little bit. I think that it's a technique issue. I noticed that there are times where he doesn't really have his base isn't super wide. His feet get close together, and then sometimes he won't roll forward out of his hips or really well. He'll kind of he's not using his full power
Yeah,
with the technique he's using right now. And so I think that that's something that can be improved, but that there is definitely he's not a foolproof, error free prospect at this point. Um, with the disengaging thing, I mean, I didn't notice that a whole lot. His arms are 32 inches around there, which is a little bit on the shorter side, but not too bad. I think that unless he meets like a super long center or something like that in the NFL, I don't foresee that being a huge issue. But I think the double team struggling against that, he'll need to clean up some stuff with that in the NFL.
Yeah. So it's something I've always kind of wondered. Sometimes I like to cross reference what I see with like reports from other people and things like that. Like
Hmm.
when someone talks about like taking on a double team being like a technique issue, like what exactly do you want to see from younger players when they're approaching like a double team? Because to me, it seems like because you're at an inherent disadvantage, right? But is it like kind of like when you're I know on the offense you're trained to like split the tackle if you have two defenders coming at you? Is it kind of like a similar idea when you're from the D line? I'm just kind of interested to hear you on what you have to say about that.
Yeah, it really depends on the type of block. Defensive lineman, that's one of the harder parts of playing defensive line. I think that you have to understand, what types of blocks you're getting. So if you're getting like a zone combo where the front side guy, the guy who's kind of coming up to meet you, is looking to move up to the second level, you have to you can't get skinny, right? You can't
Hmm.
get put your hip into that gap because you want to stop that guy and stop him from climbing up to second level. So you got to kind of control half a man. Even if you get pushed back a little bit, if I see that on tape, I'm not going to be too mad at it because you're letting that linebacker just go free.
hmm
Um, Against more power stuff where they aren't as looking to move to the second level as fast, that's when you want to get skinny. And with both there's crossover with both. You want to have good hand placement, you want to control especially with your when you're trying to control those downhill double teams. You want to get hands in the armpits of
Yeah.
the first blocker. So the first blocker, I can't remember, I can't remember what the name of that blocker, what some teams call that, but there's the first blocker who will come up and try to get the guy, and then there'll be the second guy who comes in from the side, the drive blocker, who tries to get movement. And so you're right, you're gonna basically turn your hips into that drive blocker. If there's a guy coming in from my right, I'm gonna kind of flip my right hip into that gap so I can anchor. Um, and then there's just a lot that depends on the situation.
Sure.
So you might want to shed the guy that you're engaged with to make a play in that gap. You might just want to screw a knee into the ground to anchor more solidly and just let linebackers run free. So there's a whole lot that goes into it. I look at block recognition. Can you understand, what blocks you're getting and how you need to engage them differently? And then stuff like hand placement, pad level, which really is applicable to both of them in slightly different ways. But I think it starts with those technical things, and yeah, there's probably more information than is needed, and
No, no,
so
no, that's great. No, that's really
No,
really
that's
interesting.
great.
Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, the only thing that I was going to say was what I look at, and like Sam said, it's not like an exact science with it. So you can't
yeah.
really, you can only go by what you know and what you can pick apart. The thing that I see is, can they handle the double team? And, I'm not going to get into the exacts like Sam can because I'm not that technically sound on it, but, you know, can you handle it? You want, from my point of view, you want to be able to eat that double team so you can let your other guys make the plays. And that's where I was kind of seeing with Ika was that there were a lot of times that the double team was more controlling him than he was controlling the double team. And, that's what kind of bugged me with the size that he is. He should be able to get more leverage with being able to control that. I don't expect him to make a play out of it. If he makes a play, that's an extra star in my book.
Yeah.
But with the size, you should be able to at least eat the two blockers to let your linebackers or your DBs or whatever come in and make that play. So
Right.
that's what I look at.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
and there are definitely situations where size it can only go so far. You gotta be technically solid
Yeah,
to succeed, especially in the NFL where everyone's going to be physically
yeah,
dominant.
Yeah.
And like one guy we might talk about later, Colby Wooden out of Auburn. He's 280 pounds and he's controlling double teams because he has
yeah.
good technique. And so that kind of stuff, it's definitely something to watch. It's definitely something that can make a big difference.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's really interesting. How do you feel about? So this is kind of a guy that I really liked, but I didn't think the Packers would draft him at all. Kalijah Cansey from Pitt, the Aaron Donald clone or wannabe. But how do you feel about someone like him who's a bit undersized, but still quite technically refined and a skilled rusher?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like you said, it just with his size, the Packers don't typically draft guys who are outliers like that, and so it's probably a moot point. But I like him a lot. I mean, pass rush is king, so a guy who can rush as well
Hmm.
as he can, just not only technically really proficient, but just high energy, a lot of explosive athleticism to his pass rushes. I think that there's a lot of value in a guy like that, even if you have to scheme around some of what his potential deficiencies in the run might be. And I think that the running stuff, there he will be limited in that. Just his arms are super short. I think 30 inches is what he measured in at the combine. That's the biggest issue to me, not just his size, but just his arm length. He's gonna have trouble locking out and shutting blocks. Um, but you can scheme around that. Just give him one gap and let him use his hands to stop guys even getting a grip on him, and just let him shoot gaps and make plays in the backfield.
Yeah.
He's one of the guys that I really liked, but he is on the small side. However, I think he could go. He's one of the guys that I have wrote down here that could go the Rashawn Gary route, and instead of being a down lineman, maybe drop. At the combine he measured at 6 foot, 280 pounds. Well, Rashawn Gary is what 275, 277,
Yeah, something
somewhere
like that.
around there. So even if this guy, if Cansey can drop, 5 pounds, he could be, an outside edge rusher for the Packers and the kind of Rashawn Gary mold. And I think he could thrive in it. I mean, one of the things I got wrote down in my notes is he's an interesting prospect because he played both inside, hand in the dirt, and outside standing up. So that means he's already got an idea on how to do either or, depending on what the team's asking him to do. So, I don't think the Packers are going to take this guy in the first round unless they really believe that he's going to be the second coming of Rashawn Gary or whatever.
Yeah.
But he has a quick first step. I thought he shot the gap pretty good. He's got a good bull rush to him. He stayed pretty low. And like I said, I think he could be an interesting edge prospect more than he's going to be a defensive line prospect.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I think that you would still have to scheme around him a little bit because you can't really trust him. With the way that they play their edge guys a lot is they have to, set the edge and then control the inside gap as well. And so I don't know if you kind of like on the inside. I don't know if he has the length to do that, but it could definitely be a situation where you're able to use his disruptiveness a little bit. It's more easily accessible on the edge. That
Mm.
would be an interesting kind of move for the Packers to make.
Yeah.
Like I said, it probably won't be a first round move, but if
Yeah.
he's fallen to that second, third round, I don't know where he's projected to go right now. So I mean, if he starts falling to the mid rounds, and the Packers are like, hey, this would be a great project to add to our edge depth, then maybe we'll pull the trigger on it. So
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be interesting. Um, Yeah, cool. Nice. That was really cool hearing about those guys. How do you feel about this kind of day two range? I mean, I've kind of noticed this with like a lot of the positions in this draft is that there's such a rich day two range. And I mean, it's inevitable that some of these prospects will fall out of that. But yeah, there's this guys like Keanu Benton, Broderick Martin, Zach Pickens, Moro Ojomo from Texas. There's so many guys that I really enjoyed watching who, based on a few different draft boards I've seen projected to go in that kind of middle round range. Who are you looking at for there from the Packers? Because I think that's probably a range where they would realistically actually pick someone.
Okay,
Yeah,
this is gonna hurt me.
oh,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry, Sam. I gotta do this. This is gonna hurt me, and people are gonna wonder if I'm being held by gunpoint or something by saying this. But I did, and I can't even say it. I mean, it hurts my mouth just trying to form the words. But I did like Keanu Benton out of that school in the north that I don't like. He did good size, good hand usage. He played the run well. He gets his arms up to bat the passes, bat passes down, so he's got, instinct. I thought he had a good set of pass rush moves, good first step. He's got the strength, and he pretty much terrified the whole Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
They,
Yeah.
nobody wanted to mess with him because he was just tearing it up. So yeah, that scarlet and white school up north prospect. Yeah, it hurts.
Yeah, for sure. I like him a lot too. And I think he is kind of in that, definitely in that day two range. I feel like I've seen at least one mock draft where he kind of went towards the end of the first round, so he
Yeah. Right.
might be climbing a bit. But yeah, like you said, he's one of the most interesting pass rushers I think in this class, just because he's got the moves, and then his hands are just jackhammers, man. When he clubs a guy, they get rocked, and just I love seeing those violent hands, and combined with the moves that he's got, the understanding of how to rush the passer, and he's got some explosiveness. He was able to get into the backfield and blow up some runs from nose as a nose tackle in Wisconsin. So
Yeah. And also, something I really love about like line prospects is the wrestling background, which he does have. I think he had
yeah,
46-2 record in high school. And he played D1 wrestling. Yeah, so yeah, you love to see that in the lineman. Um, what other
yeah,
what
Well,
other
and he's got one of the top RAS scores coming out of the combine too. So
yeah.
I mean, he's a very athletic guy. So
Yeah, love that. I think the Packers will like him. Um, what other guys did you like in that day two range, Sam?
well, you mentioned one of my other guys, Maro Ojomo, who I don't really think of him as much as a pass rusher, at least from what I saw on film. Maybe he's been developing that, in the lead up to the draft a little bit. But he's just got a lot of physical tools. He's got some really impressive length, 34-inch arms, great first step, a lot of strength. I think that he's a really good guy to kind of fit that mold of the Dean Lowry's, the Jaron Reed's, that 3 technique, 5 technique that they're probably going to be looking to replace a bit. Can shed blocks really well. You can control. I noticed there's actually some tangible improvement in his technique with controlling double teams as the year went on. So it's something I always like to see. Just something that they're an ascending player. Just coming into the draft, I really like to see that. And then with those physical tools, he's got power. He can generate knockback. He's got some explosiveness, that length. I think that you can develop that into something as a pass rusher, even if he isn't doing a whole lot right now.
yeah, and he's another one that had a pretty high RAS score
Yeah,
coming out of the
Yeah.
yeah,
combine.
great
And I
combine.
know Raz is very controversial in a lot of people's eyes, but the Packers tend to look at Raz scores more often than not with any other draft picks. I mean, they do reach out of the box once in a while, but
Yeah, and it's
and
yeah. Sorry, just quickly, it's funny because people like especially Jacob Westendorf, hashtag friend of the pod. He loves to kind of dunk on the RAS score thing, and like it's at the end of the day, it's just a way to kind of collate different like physical tests. But I found it really interesting. Brian Murphy pointed out, he wrote about how the Packers are one of like the top three most like aligned with RAS scores when they draft, and when they miss in the draft, it's actually most often when they don't draft guys within those thresholds. So I find that quite funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my guy running off of the RAS score here again is former teammate of TJ Slayton, and that's Dervon Dexter out of
Yeah,
Florida.
yeah, I liked him.
I thought he had some speed to him. He ate up blocks pretty good, decent strength. He had pretty good leverage. I thought he was a little slow off the line, but I wasn't sure if that was more the scheme or if that was more him. Um, and he played up and down the line, so he could slot in at the nose, he could slot in at the end. And I thought he was a pretty good run defender. And then, of course, you got the RAS of a 9.21. So, I mean, he was one of the top RAS scores for the defensive line at the combine. So that puts him up on a little bit of the list, no matter what you want to look at. Goody seems to always shoot for those RAS scores, and he's got it for the type of player he is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, like you said, the main gripe I have with his game is just that first step. He just sometimes he'll just kind of he'll be the last guy off the ball, and I've also noticed he sometimes will like rise up rather than
Yeah.
firing forward, and so he can sacrifice some pad level.
That's where
But
I was wondering if maybe that was scheme more than it was him, or if that's him not, or technique. So I wasn't sure on that. That's why I put that kind of in my note.
yeah, I don't think it was directly part of the scheme. I know that he did play a lot of snaps for Florida in this past season, and so I think that probably got into a little bit of him
Okay.
got not firing 100% off the ball every single snap, because he was at like 310 pounds doing like 40 snaps a game, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's gonna wear a guy down. But he's just got a lot of physical tools. I know he was a pretty high level varsity basketball player, so he's got kind of that multi-athlete background. He's got nice length, strength, explosiveness. He's got heavy hands as a pass rusher. There's a lot of stuff that you use there, and I think that you clean up some of those technique issues off the snap, and you got an exciting player on your hands.
Definitely. I really liked what I saw out of him, just minus a couple of the things. So
Yeah,
that day two mid round type guy, you know, you usually get those with the high athletic scores, but it's kind of project. So I'd be happy with him, and I think get two former teammates together and form your own Bash Brother type deal.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I really love TJ Slayton, and I still do. I think that he has, there is potential for a solid role with the team, and yeah, I loved him coming out like what he could have been, and he's only gotten better since coming in and settling in the league. So yeah, it'd be nice if we get another one of TJ Slayton. Um, Another guy I really liked is Zach Pickens out of South Carolina. Super, like productive, obviously. Yeah, had a really strong combine. I really just like his ability to slot in like at a multitude of positions and techniques. I think he's a guy that, I think the Packers really value the kind of that versatility and ability to move around. And yeah, this obviously the athleticism. I think he's I think he already kind of understands how to like attack. I don't think that you're like building him from the ground up. I don't think he's like some kind of project. I think there's room to improve, but yeah, I think he's someone that the Packers will probably have had their eye on as well.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you brought him up because that was one of the guys I wanted to get to. He's just a really complete player. I think that he would be a great second round pick in that sort of range if he even falls to the Packers, because I think he's gonna go pretty high with the athletic testing he had.
Yeah.
Just solid all around. He can defend the run. He's got great length and power. Pass rushing is where he really stuck out to me. He can just attack offensive linemen in a lot of ways. There were a couple times with undersized centers, like I think against University of Kentucky, where he would just drive them into the backfield, bull rushing them. And then there were times where he would, use his hands more, use chops and swipes and mix up his footwork a little bit with jab steps and stutters and that kind of thing. And just when a guy has that many tools in the toolbox, I always feel really nice about where he can go in the NFL, especially with those physical tools, that explosiveness, that length that he showed in the combine.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest. I really didn't get to watch him just because I couldn't find any good film breakdown on him. So I'm just gonna agree with you guys.
Well, I do know a guy on Twitter who does film breakdowns of D line, actually. Um, yeah. Is there anyone else that you want to talk about here? I was kind of curious to ask you what you thought of Roderick Martin out of Western Kentucky.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. I think that there's some physical tools he's got there. He's got some quickness off the ball. I didn't love a lot of his technique stuff. Felt like he get a little high. His hands, his hand positioning wasn't great at times. There's some pass rushing stuff he can do. It's kind of interesting. There's kind of this weird like group of sort of undersized nose tackles in college, like him, Scott Matlock out of Boise State. I think there's another guy, Dom Peterson out of Nevada, where it's just like they all kind of have the same build and same kind of general play style. But I don't know. I wouldn't put him as a day 2 pick right now. Just
Right.
I think there's a lot of technique stuff he needs to do, and questions. Where will he fit in the NFL? But he's definitely got some physical tools, some explosiveness. There were some flashes of pass rush acumen that I really liked. And to be upfront, I haven't gotten a whole lot of film on him. He was kind of one of the lower guys on my list, and so is just starting to watch him this past this past week. So liked some of the stuff I saw, but I think there's still some stuff that he can develop in.
Yeah. Yeah. Joe, how do you feel about the very late range of this draft? I think there's quite a few guys who are, projects and in kind of there's stuff to work with here. And I think this is also, where Green Bay will be looking to draft some of the depth here. Is there any guys that you got excited about in that late range?
Well, like I always try to preference, I struggle trying to put these guys in a round just whatever. So, I'm going to make that a soundbite one of these days. Disclaimer, I don't put these guys in rounds. But you got Moro's teammate at Texas, Keandre Coburn.
Mhm.
Solid first step, strength, it looked good. I thought he disengaged from blocks pretty well. A big bodied guy, big motor, or good motor. I thought maybe he needed to get a little bit lower in his stance and when he shot off the snap. Um, he he has workable pass rush moves, but they're not the greatest. And of course, he's got a low RAS score, so you know, sorry, my voice is kind of breaking here. So I don't know if he's got the ability to get any better or if he's just going to be a rotational, type guy, or maybe he just doesn't test well. Kind of like a Kingsley from last year. Didn't test well, but really showed up on film. So that's
Mhm.
one of them. Another guy that I got is, and you got him on your list, is I'm gonna butcher this name, Jacqueline Roy Law, something like that. And he's another one, good size, strength seems to uh be there. I don't think he's going to be much of a pass rusher, but more of a block eater. Um, he can get some push, but struggles to disengage, and I think he gets caught out of his stance a little too much. I don't know if that's because he wasn't getting, the plays weren't getting to him right or what, but it seemed like every other play he was standing halfway up, and as soon as he went down in his stance, they were snapping the ball. So it didn't seem like he was ready a lot of times.
Yeah. Those are honestly two guys that I really like is kind of later, day 3-ish nose tackle type guys. Jacqueline Roy, he's a really interesting guy. I really like him. He's kind of like a discount Mozzie Smith, Mozzie Smith at home. where he's got he's got some power. He can do some nose tackle stuff. He can eat double teams, control multiple gaps. But he's limited as a pass rusher, kind of like you said. He really relies on his power, on his bull rush. He'll do some stuff where he kind of get a bull rush going, and then pull the blocker, push pull move, or there's a little bit, there's some variation to his pass rush game that I like to see. But it's probably something he could develop, and he's kind of an interesting guy because I thought that he showed some flashes of explosiveness, where he
Yeah.
can kind of penetrate upfield a bit, not just be a traditional nose tackle. So that's something I really like to see. Where he can move around a little bit. He can play a little bit of like a big three technique. Um, and then Keandre Coburn, he's a really interesting guy too. I feel like I've kind of tagged him as like a guy who's going to become a fan favorite if he's drafted by Green Bay. Because he's built like a fire hydrant. Like he's like 6'1", 6'2", so he's a shorter guy, but he's 340 pounds, so he's massive. His nickname is Snacks, so we can get a Snacks on our team
There we
again.
go.
Yeah.
And he just seems like an all around likable guy, and so I'd really like to see him get with the Packers. But he kind of like you said, he really does a lot of stuff well in the run game. That's kind of mostly all he can do at this point. I really loved his work defeating double teams. I think
Hmm.
there was a game against TCU. Steve Avila, one of the better guards in the draft, he did a really good job, not only controlling double teams with Avila and other offensive linemen trying to get movement on him, but then also, you know, getting stacking and shedding offensive
Yep.
linemen in the run game, where he's trying to control, gap and a half kind of that style of play. Like I said, kind of a limited player. I don't know if he's ever going to be able to do a bunch of penetration, get a bunch of penetration in the backfield, or get a lot of pass rush. I think when he gets in pass rush situations, he's pretty enthusiastic, but he doesn't really do a whole lot. But he's a fun guy to watch if a little bit limited.
Well, you know who else had the nickname Snacks that was an undrafted that had a long
Yeah,
career in the league was Damon Harrison.
exactly.
And, if we can get another one to even put up half of what he did, then I've always loved Damon Harrison just because he wasn't local living, but he went to the college only like 40 minutes from where I live. So, I always loved that rep there. But yeah, I really liked him. There's a couple other guys that I can mention here. Uh, one is, uh, and you've got him on your list here, Nick, is, if I can find him in my notebook here, was Devontae Stills. And
Yeah, Dante Stills.
Dante Stills. And, I thought he was really good, but I think he's another one that's going to be, like I mentioned, like the kid from Pittsburgh, that I think he would be more of a moldable edge guy than he's going to be a down lineman in Green Bay. Of course, you got to go with the RAS score, which is an 8.44. He's quick off the snap. He has 3-4 experience, good motor, long arms, average height, but a little bit of light in the weight. And I thought he was pretty good with the hands, so he had really good hand usage. I got a quick look at him before coming on tonight, so I didn't really dig deep into him, but I thought he was he could be somebody like Cansey out of Pitt that could be converted into the Rashawn Gary mold. And then my last one that I'll do, well, I got two more, but I'll only do one more. Taryn Vinson out of Ohio State.
I didn't get to
I
watch
thought he
him.
had a good first. I think he had a good first step. He stayed pretty low. Might need to add a little bit of weight. Good initial punch. Not a ton of production. Had a good motor. Gets good pass rush. Um, Push, but needs to work on his disengagement or his pass rush moves. But he could be another guy in the later rounds that could be coming in as a depth slash project.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch him, unfortunately. Yeah, one of the guys that I got to watch just this week actually after Sam suggested him is Devonshire Maxwell out of Chattanooga. I kind of thought he was almost like the D line equivalent of like a Kingsley and Nagbury. I really like the hand usage. He's a very like crafty pass rusher. I don't think that he offers like a heap as a run stuffer, but yeah, I just really love his ability to like manipulate offensive linemen. I feel like he has one of the better understandings of hand usage in this class, from what I can see and tell. I mean, what did you think of him, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I really liked him. I think that pass rush his skill is what really sticks out. He was super productive at Chattanooga. Obviously a smaller school, so the competition level isn't going to be as top level as some of the other guys. But even when he got against guys were more from big schools, there was a game against Illinois this past season where he had 2 sacks. So he's been productive against some of those bigger schools. I know he holds the record for most sacks in a game. He had 5 sacks at one point in
Oh wow.
2021. Yeah, so he's definitely got some stuff as a pass rusher, and it's not just winning off physical tools, right?
Hmm.
He's able to use his hands. He's able to use counters. He's got a really nice kind of move combo set of combos where his initial move will be like a cross chop and then club, and then he'll kind of build a counter off that where he starts to go into the cross chop, then spins and kind of elbows the guy in the back. They call that an ice pick to kind of get free. So it's just really pretty to watch. Really, really fun to see that kind of that distinctive signature pass rush move for a guy like that. I thought that in the run game he wasn't asked to do a whole lot in the games that I saw, but I thought he had decent play strength, decent hand usage, and yeah, it just looked good overall. He looked like a guy who can do some stuff at the NFL, maybe get a little bit of developmental time, but he looks like an exciting guy.
Basically, you're saying the Patriots are going to take him in the first round this year.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Cole Strange has actually been really good, so I can't even laugh at them too much for that.
Right. That's why I said the Patriots will end up drafting him because they, just like Ted Thompson years ago, he can seem to find uh these stars out of nowhere. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, is there anyone else that you want to talk about here, Sam?
Um, I don't. There are not a whole lot of other players we touched on kind of some of my favorite guys. A couple guys I'll mention real quick. Adetomiwa Adebawore, out of Northwestern.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a really interesting guy because he was insane at athletic testing. He had insane athletic testing at the combine. He actually tested as an edge rusher. I think that in the NFL he's probably going to play both three technique and kind of outside on the edge a bit. It's just got great length, just a lot of explosiveness, a lot of power. He still needs to develop as a pass rusher, but he's kind of like I think he's going to be a little bit of the Rashawn Gary of this class, where he's got some amazing physical tools, but he's a bit of a ball of clay that you got to mold into something as a more complete player.
Hmm.
And then the other guy I wanted to mention, Carl Brooks out of Bowling Green, kind of the other smaller school guy, where he's converting from edge rusher, probably converting from edge rusher to more of a three technique type player. He played on the inside in the Senior Bowl, and he was an edge rusher at 300 pounds, so he's kind of probably going to move inside at the next level. But he's another guy who just kind of in that mold of those guys like Kalijah Cansey, Zach Pickens, where he's a really good pass rusher. He knows how to use his hands. He's got some power, quickness. He's a really fluid player, from what I saw. Just really moves between, or he transitions between moves really well, and just can penetrate, get into the backfield. So, he can hold his own against interior offensive linemen based on what he saw at the Senior Bowl. Again, kind of like some of those other guys we've talked about, I think that it might take him a little bit to transition just because he's moving from edge to interior. So he might have to adjust to that a little bit. But he's another really exciting player who I think will probably test athletically really well. He wasn't was kind of surprised he wasn't even invited to the combine. But I'm looking forward to his pro day to see how he does there.
Yeah. I really like Adetomwa Adebare. Yeah, I probably butchered that, but yeah, that was one of the guys that I thought. It's a shame we didn't get to talk about him on the Edge episode, but yeah, I think that he's someone who could legitimately be a great round 2 pick or round 3 pick, if he even lasts that
Yeah.
long for the Packers, because yeah, I think he's kind of exactly what they love ever since especially since Good took over. He's kind of like very much exactly in that mold of what they want from an edge rusher, and with the ability and versatility to move around, with a bit of development, I think he's the kind of guy that they would love.
Yeah.
No third round picks. We put our foot down. No more third round picks.
Yeah.
So you got to hope you get him in the second, or he falls to the fourth.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone's got to break it eventually.
It hasn't happened in 12 years.
Well, I'm not even 12
Yeah,
years
it's
old,
so weird.
Well, yeah, that's beside the point.
Yeah, well, if you guys are happy to wrap it up here, I don't have anyone else I'm keen to talk about.
Yeah, I don't think there's really anyone else that really stuck out to me.
Yeah, I mean, I've got one last guy I can talk about, but it's not really. I don't think I've had a lot of good things to say about him, so it's just better off not to talk about him.
Well, now I'm curious to hear who it
Yeah.
is.
Well, I mean, I won't say that it was horrible. But the kid from Mississippi State, Cameron Young,
Mm.
um, I thought he was a little high in his stance. He did have good size. He's good off the snap. But I wish he was a little bit more physical. Good hand usage, experience in the 3-4. Uh, that I it didn't wow me. I should say. I mean, he was okay, but it wasn't like, oh my god, this guy's the second coming, type deal. Which I don't know if you guys would agree, but I think this is really a weak defensive line class for this draft year. I mean, you've got a couple of guys that are being talked about as a first rounder, but even those guys are a little, not all there. Now that Jalen Carter's in some legal trouble, who knows how,
Yeah,
where
that's
he'll
true.
go.
Yeah.
And then the kid from Clemson, he's about the only one right now you could say is legit first rounder. So I mean, it's kind of a weaker class in my opinion.
Yeah, it's always hard going, especially the past like 3 classes have been so good. Last year we had Travis Jones, who I loved. Was it Derek Hall? Um, Obviously Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt, but yeah, there was so many great prospects that I really loved in last year's class. I think, I think this class still has its like, somewhat gems, but it's just a weaker class overall. I think it's really hard to kind of compare, especially with what we've had recently.
Yeah, I think that there's the one like really blue chip guy. I think you have in Jalen Carter, and I don't think unless there's more charges that are brought against him. I kind of doubt he'll fall a whole lot just because his talent is so impressive. But we're really after that. I mean, I really love Mozzie Smith, but I know other people, don't have him ranked super highly. There's like 4 or 5 guys after Carter who I've seen, ranked anywhere from like the first to second round, and I can see, arguments for all of them going, later and being like second round type prospects, because they're shortcomings. I can see shortcomings in all of their games. I think that there's not a whole lot of like clear first round picks in this defensive line class. I do think that there's a really strong like day 2 class where there's like that band of guys. We talked about like Benton, Carl Brooks. I would put as a day 2 guy. Um, Zach Pickens, Javon Dexter. Those guys. There's like 5 or 6 guys who I feel comfortable taking in the second round, and so I think that's where the strength of the class is going to be. But yeah, there's not a whole lot of like blue chip prospects in the first down day 1.
It's going to be a weird first round anyway, because
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's so many uh, positions that are like Sam just said with the defensive tackle. There's maybe one or two guys that are legit first rounders, but the rest of them are more your mid to late round guys. So it's going to be an interesting way to go with the draft. And I'm not going to say Jalen Carter is going to fall too far, but if Laramie Tunstall fell 11 picks for just a gas mask bong, video, Carter's going to take a little bit of a tumble just because he's being linked to an automotive death of a teammate,
Yeah.
while they were racing. So it's going to be a bad look, but, hopefully he can learn from it and, he won't take what was that kid out at LSU a few years ago? Collins, Lyle Collins.
Yeah.
Uh,
That was a fair
yeah,
while
I
ago.
think he,
Yeah,
yeah.
he was the offensive lineman that was being questioned
Yeah.
about like an ex-girlfriend's murder. He had nothing to do with it all, but he dropped all the way out of the draft just because there was
Really? Yeah.
questions behind it. Yeah.
Mm,
Okay, interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, right? Because I mean, you look in the past couple of years. I mean, I'm still kind of shocked that nothing has ever come of this stuff with Micah Parsons. you know,
Yeah.
like that was pretty crazy. I mean, to a lesser extent, Devontae Wyatt. Yeah, and I guess it's really kind of tough. I mean, it seems like a lot of these Georgia guys, to be honest, have I had said just character issues, but it seems like they get caught up in a lot of these things. Um, but yeah, I mean, it is really funny how I think also the the league was really weird about drugs for the longest time. I mean, about weed for the longest time. And I guess it's kind of getting better now, but yeah, it is kind of like very strange to see how they handle these things. And obviously we're not that far off from the whole Deshaun Watson thing, and it's just it's very strange
Yeah.
how they kind of decide to like judge players on what's happened in their past.
Yeah, the penalties for certain things are definitely weird. You know, you have Josh Gordon who got his whole career screwed up just because of weed, but
Yeah.
you've got guys like Deshaun Watson who are getting fully guaranteed money after all the shit that he pulled, or guys knocking out their girlfriends that are only getting like 2 games. Yeah, it's screwed up, but that can be a whole
Yeah.
nother podcast.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah. Well, before we finish up here, Sam, is there anything of yours that you want to plug? I mean, obviously you're doing the kind of series of like draft clips and things like that, but any pieces you've been writing, etc., you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean the big thing I've been working on for past couple months really. I'm doing the working on the defensive line rankings for the Cheesehead TV draft guide. So that's kind of been the big thing. I'm obviously still doing some stuff, still writing for Wisconsin Sports Heroics. I was planning to do a couple more free agents before the free agency period actually hit, but time kind of ran out, and so I'll probably wait a little bit to see who goes in those first couple days, and then maybe write up some guys who are going to be more affordable that the Packers might be able to snap up, or if the Packers sign someone early on, maybe write some film type articles on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, sweet. Well, as always, guys, you can find us on Twitter. You can find Sam at Sam_D Holman, myself at Nicholas GRGR, Joe at Iowa_Joe86, the podcast at Outback_Packers, and on Facebook now. Until next time, we'll see you later.